Hello, traders. Cousin Vinny coming to you from theclosingprint.com, February the 25th, 2024. In this edition of the weekend video newsletter, we'll discuss the markets closing near all-time highs, with 7 of 10 New York FANG index stocks closing higher, and the S&P call wall moving up to 5,100. Breadth was improving for the most part, with 15 bullish indicators, 3 neutral, and 2 bearish to start the week. The S&P 500 closed near all-time highs, just shy of the new call wall at 5,100, with all of our indicators, RSI, MACD, and stochastics, more susceptible for a fade. All the while, price action staying very strong last week, despite the bearish flows to end the day on Friday, which was reflected in the New York FANG index mostly. As you can see, we broke out of this descending channel and did move lower on Friday back into Thursday's price action, wherein we saw small caps fading a bit and not participating on Friday, while the New York Stock Exchange closed near highs as well. So the NYSE 2,000 stocks on the composite closed at 17,600. New York Stock Exchange advanced decline, turned up. We're just looking for a higher high this week. And the number of stocks making new highs versus new lows out of those 2,000 showed a 26.2% increase on Friday, despite the selling on the New York FANG index of 10 big cap tech stocks. So where does that leave us? Well, we have most of the S&P 500, most of the mid caps and the small caps, despite their non-participation on Friday, moving a bit higher, as well as the NASDAQ. We did see the advanced decline line moving sideways slightly on Friday, but it is making higher highs and higher lows, so there is a pretty good chance that we could see a follow-through, especially if the New York Stock Exchange can see momentum continue off of this trough. We are making higher highs and higher lows on the New York Stock Exchange McClellan Oscillator. The black line is moving above the zero line, and we can see that NYSE is somewhat flat but turning higher to end the week. So there is improvement in breadth, being overshadowed by the New York FANG index stocks experiencing some selling on Friday. 7 of 10 New York FANGs did move higher, with only Netflix, Snowflake, and Tesla lower for the week. Okay, so far we have the S&P 500 closing at highs along with the New York Stock Exchange. We have IWM flat for the week and the New York FANG index seeing a little bit of selling. But breadth is improving, and if we have some support from the bonds, currencies, and commodities markets, we could see the markets move higher. For now, the bond stock ratio is moving lower, so that is bullish. In addition, the 10-year did see some rejection at the 100 period moving average, looking for that to pull back if you're bullish. And we'd like to see junk bonds and high yield corporate debt continue this path higher. The 9, 21, 50 are all clustered together. Prices moving away, up and to the right. RSI is rising. So there is an indication that we could see a follow through in junk bonds. Participants that would trade junk or high yield corporate are risk averse, meaning if we started to see this dropping off below the 50-day, that would tell us to get the hell out of the way and start reducing our risk in the S&P 500. That's the opposite of what we're seeing. Neutral to slightly bullish as we're pressing up against the upper part of this range. Therefore, bonds and the U.S. dollar need to be cooperating. In this case, the U.S. dollar did fade for, 8 trading days from the high, back down to 103.75. We could go in either direction. RSI indicates that we could see more weakness in the dollar, which would be helpful for the U.S. markets and international markets as well. As you can see in the Nikkei, which made a new all-time high, something we haven't seen in 34 years, with the Japanese economy accelerating. So look for the US dollar to deteriorate a bit more, helping the US equities as well as international markets over the next few weeks. Finally, commodities did bounce somewhat. We had gold, silver moving higher along with industrial metals, copper closing near the top of its range. In addition, we had Brent crude and West Texas both moving lower last week on Friday. And despite the increase in commodity prices, gold, silver, and copper, the S&P 500 is still outperforming. As you can see, this has turned up. It's just now moving through the mean, the middle of this zone, suggesting that we could see higher prices in equity markets in the short and long term. Taken together, equity markets, our indicators, bonds, currencies, and commodities, sectors are improving. This is the consumer discretionary versus consumer staples. We want to see this moving higher to be bullish, not lower like back in 2022 when the bear market started. Although it's not straight up, it is making higher highs and higher lows. So that's reflected in growth and value. It just looks like there is sector rotation. Last week we had growth underperforming greatly back to the 21 EMA. It needed to come back. It was a bit extended. And value stocks, materials, energy, financials, industrials, consumer staples, healthcare, utilities, all started to see some strength. Moving off of the 21 EMA. Now this is starting to get a bit overbought. Could move a bit higher, but the value and growth are suggesting that the weakness that we've seen recently is just sector rotation until we see something else to indicate it might be anything other than rotation. Over the last week, we saw that rotation into materials, financials, industrials, consumer staples, and utilities. Healthcare also pushed a bit higher as biotechs continued their march off the 50 MA bounce that we saw last week, again suggesting rotation is what we're seeing. Retail also closed at highs, as you can see. So we'll be looking for those retail stocks that performed last week, like Walmart, Costco, and others, to continue into March. As that rotation continues, and we see perhaps the US dollar and bonds move a bit lower, junk bonds higher, we're looking for stocks that have already managed to get a bit oversold, pull back to the 50-day or the 21-day, whatever, and see this condition where stochastics is oversold and starting to turn along with MACD and RSI. With our Arcellx back above the 21-day, a biotech healthcare related candidate that reports again in March, together with stocks like Arista Networks, occasionally on the IBD 50, bouncing off the 50-day, RSI rising, stochastics and MACD turning, with the company beating in its most recent report on February 12th, reports again on May 13th. Arista Networks with an earnings growth rate of 45%, revenue growth of 20.8%, and beating earnings this last time around by 14%. This cloud networking solutions company looks like it wants to follow through, giving us a potential candidate for a bounce and continuation this week. Boyd Gaming and some of the other casino-related stocks had seen a surge in price action. Boyd Gaming turning higher, stochastics, MACD, volume picking up, price back above the 50 and the 200-day. With the company beating in its most recent report, showing revenue growth of 30.4%. Earnings growth is a bit suspect. That said, Las Vegas Sands, Wynn, other companies seeing similar bullish price action, RSI rising, price bouncing off of the 200 period moving average, with the 9/21 day crossing up through the 200 day, a couple of weeks ago. Stochastics turning back up. Volume started to pick up as well, showing institutions have been picking up shares as this turns the corner and moves higher. Watch for Boyd Gaming to continue, along with Wynn Resorts. A little fade back to the 21-day. Now we're starting to see a bounce. Stochastics turning, RSI above 50. InvestNet, ENV, a wealth management company. We can see that this is faded right along the 200-period moving average and starting to move higher. Stochastics is turning. Volume is starting to pick up as well. The company reported recently a beat with earnings growth of 186%, revenue growth of 8.5%. It beat its expectations by 30% last time around. Again, providing unified wealth management software and services to financial advisors and institutions. HubSpot, HUBS, faded back to the 50-day. Buyers stepped up. Volume is still moving lower. You want to see a couple of days where volume is moving higher. The thing here, though, it showed up on the scan. Stochastics turning and MACD about to move higher, giving us reason to watch this one. Construction-related names like Mueller Industries produces a lot of copper piping and different types of materials that construction companies use, with the price of copper bouncing last week, indicating that some companies like this related to construction should improve into the month of March. Mueller Industries came back to the 50-day, bouncing and started to move higher. Stochastics turning. Just need to see volume pick up over the next few days. MSCI also reported earnings recently in January. At the end of January, Stochastics, MACD's turning. Volume is starting to pick up. This company reported a beat with earnings growth of 29%, revenue growth 19.8%. The company, of course, providing investment decision support tools, including indexes. As the financial industry continues to see rotation, moving higher, stocks like Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan have been doing very well. Investment advisors, brokers, financial related names, all bullish, moving up and to the right. NetApp also pulled back recently, bounced on Wednesday, trying to get back above the 50-day. Stochastics and MACD turning, along with RSI. With the company reporting at the end of February this week. Last time around, it beat expectations. So be aware that it reports on Thursday and could see a move back above the 50-day. Maybe for a day trade or short-term swing with earnings on Thursday. Nuvei Corporation also bounced at the 200-period moving average. It reports in 2 weeks. This company is a payments processor. Remember, Block and MasterCard, Visa, all have been doing fairly well in recent weeks. Nuvei beating expectations, but only seeing revenue growth of 54%. Earnings growth has been down a bit, so we'll have to keep an eye on that. This one reports again in 2 weeks. Another indication that there's some rotation back into financial related stocks, so keep that in mind. As some money comes out of tech, it seems that participants are getting into some of the value areas like financials, materials, industrials, etc. Progress Software, nice bounce, moving back above the 200-day, the 50-day on Friday. Look for a follow through this week. ResMed, a company and a stock that we've traded before in the medical industry group. Looking for this bounce off the 200-day to start to accelerate. Stochastics and MACD are turning. RSI is rising. With the company not reporting until April 24th, it did beat expectations last time around. 12.5% revenue growth, earnings growth 13%, and a beat by 3.3% in its last go-round on January 24th. Renaissance RE Holdings, this is a reinsurance company, financial related, bouncing off the 21-day. Stochastics turning, volume starting to pick up, RSI rising. With the company recently reporting a beat, revenue growth, and earnings growth are superior with a 35% beat last go round. Again, the company is a reinsurance and insurance related candidate with a core business in property catastrophe reinsurance. Timken Company in the automotive related bearings manufacturer, engines, etc. This one's turning the corner, bouncing at the 50-day. RSI is rising, stochastics and MACD turning. Watch the volume, see if that continues higher. Watch for that to increase with the company showing earnings growth of 12.3%. Additional stocks that may see a follow through next week: Arrowhead, Copart, big bullish engulfing candle on Friday with volume. Carvana, prospects going forward, very bullish. Dominion Energy, Evolis, shift for payments, watching for that to move higher. Macy's retail has been doing well lately. Looking for follow through. Real estate, rocket companies, mortgage related. Block, of course, with earnings. Watch some of these payment processors companies. Many of them will most likely follow through. Tandem, Diabetes Care, volume was well above average on Thursday and Friday. This one looks like it's gearing up for a follow through. And judging by its weekly time frame, we could see this turn over the next several months. A 50% retracement, which would bring us back to around 70 to 75, I would imagine. Okay, traders, so that's going to do it for me. This is Cousin Vinny coming to you from theclosingprint.com on Sunday, the 25th of February. Just remember, the markets are breaking higher. Breadth is improving. Just removing the highest weighted 15 stocks on the S&P, we can see that this is not affecting price action. We can see that price action is continuing higher. The number of stocks above the 50 days turned back up, so that's looking bullish for a follow-through. Look for rotation into growth and value to continue, with potential for tech to follow through as well. I'll send out a watch list later tonight around 12 midnight on the East Coast, around 9 o'clock on the West Coast, with the best candidates for our potential trades this week. So be sure to check your inbox for that. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of your weekend. Take care, and we'll see you in the morning. Ciao.